welcome to SteamPunk. This is your host, SteamPunk Bob, and we're examining the overly long-titled Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2, a game about fighting the things man was not meant to know with the garden tools you just happen to have lying around. I don't really like Penny Arcade comics very much, and as far as cosmic horror stories, the only one I'm more than ambivalent about is Ex Machina. Given that background, I only ended up with these games, which are about the Penny Arcade cast fighting elder gods in the 1920s, because they were in a humble bundle with something I was more interested in. And even then, it took me a while to get around to playing them. I wasn't really looking forward to them. The story begins with our player-created character raking leaves, then a giant robot smashes your house. Obviously, your rake is suited for combat, so you rush after the monster, meet up with the Penny Arcade guys, and eventually you're doing some evil god killing. The player creation is quite robust. Maybe robust is a bit of a stretch, but it's more than I was expecting at least, with both a 3D model and a Penny Arcade-style drawn version of your character being used in the game. It's really the combat that sets Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2 Tournament Edition apart, though. They could have settled for making an adequate, traditional RPG, and the games would have been okay for someone who's not a fan of the source material, though probably much better for someone who is a fan of the comics or Lovecraftian horror. However, with the way the combat flows, I get serious flashbacks of the Mario RPGs. In case you're not familiar with them, they're very interactive in their battle systems. When an enemy attacks in this, you can press the spacebar in order to block or even counter the attack. Your special abilities all rely on a minigame in order to reach their full potential. Basically, the combat in these two episodes has an amazing flow and far more interactivity than your average RPG. It's that interaction that has me drawn to these games. They've just got more to the battle system than selecting which enemy to bop on the head, or thumbing through a list of functionally similar spells and working on autopilot. I like having a game that sets itself apart by doing something fun, and the combat in Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2 Tournament Edition Hobo Murder DLC is very visceral and fun. The story really doesn't do much for me. As I said, I don't care much about Penny Arcade, and most Lovecraft-inspired fiction is uninteresting to me. I didn't run into any plot holes or anything, but for the most part, I just scanned through the dialogue to know where my lawn and garden murder skills were going to be applied next. The story of both of these episodes revolves around the things man was not meant to know trying to enter our plane via dark cultic ritual, and our heroes beating the crap out of, well, pretty much everyone, but especially the dark gods in question. One of the best parts of Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2 Tournament Edition Hobo Murder DLC HD Remix, though, is the fact that they're very tightly knit together. When you click New Game in Episode 2, the game asks if you want to load your Episode 1 character, taking their looks, level, and stats from that game, and you just hit the ground running from there. The level cap is twice as high, and your first battle is against enemies with stats comparable to the last random encounters in Episode 1. In general, Episode 2 is harder, and while it has its own story arc, it feels like a true continuation of the first episode. Again, a rather simple detail, but it makes Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2, Tournament Edition, Hobo Murder DLC HD Remix with Karate Chop action feel like a very good, solid, cohesive whole. There's even an item you find one half of in the first episode and the second half in Episode 2. It's a real pity that Penny Arcade and Hothead had whatever falling out they did, because you can see that the groundwork was laid for Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episode 3 Tournament Edition Hobo Murder DLC HD Remix with Karate Chop action, The End is Nigh, to have similar features, including an item that explicitly has no use in Episode 2. I love Z-Boyd Games. They're the ones who picked up the series for Episodes 3 and 4, but while they make very solid RPGs, they make rather standard ones as well. While Cthulhu Saves the World was fun, it didn't do anything as risky and unique as Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2, Tournament Edition, Hobo Murder DLC, HD Remix with Karate Chop Action, The End Is Nigh, Director's Cut. I hope to look at and cover Episodes 3 and 4 at a later date, but I'm quite attached to the level of interaction these first two episodes have given me. I'm not sure I want to go to a menu and just pick from a list how I'm going to bash people over the head, then have no influence in how my enemy responds. I like being able to respond when attacked. Maybe my attention span has just been burned out by too many action games, but I'm scared to lose this interactive fighting in an RPG. On the other hand, Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episode 3, Tournament Edition, Hobo Murder DLC, HD Remix with Karate Chop Action, The End Is Nigh, Director's Cut Game of the Year Edition, says on its Steam store page that it has a job system, which was my favorite part of the Final Fantasy games that had them. So I'll give them a fair shake. Speaking of giving a fair shake, let's give my final thoughts on Screw it. My final thoughts on these two episodes. Fire is our gameplay analysis, and as you've picked up, I find the gameplay quite interesting. Hothead did make an RPG, but they took a lot of risks with it, and I think they paid off. The only trouble is that your special attack minigames can get tiresome on a long stretch of play, especially for Gabe, our punching man-beast. However, that's not a deal breaker for me, so I'm giving it a solid 5 out of 5 in the gameplay department. Cole makes up our story and presentation. As I said in the review, the story really doesn't do that much for me, but that could just be because Cosmic Horror and Penny Arcade aren't really my cups of tea. Even then, it felt to me like all their risks were on the gameplay side, and that the story is rather generic. I didn't really see any plot holes, but there was no point at which I was surprised or intrigued by the story or presentation. I'm giving it a passable 3 out of 5. Steam is our graphics and sound. The sound and music was rather enjoyable, and in a way I thought the music tracks gave us more of the feeling of horror and detective investigation stuff. Killing enemies gives satisfying blarg noises, and when you fail with a special attack, you get a squeaky toy hammer sound that really makes you kick yourself and want to get the next special right. The graphics also look perfectly fine, with plenty of satisfying gore when you destroy an enemy with the overkill mechanic. Overall, graphics and sound get a 4 out of 5 from me. Electric is that last little zing, the general polish of the production, and the intangible fun factor. I had a lot of fun with this one. It never really crashed on me. Controls were usually responsive. I did have a few times where Gabe's special attacks felt like the timing was off, and I did find that frustrating when it happened. Still, it feels like they had fun making this game, so a few minor hiccups aside, I'm giving it 4 out of 5. So here we are. When we add up our fire, coal, steam, electric, we get a final score of 16 out of 20. So when it comes to Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, Episodes 1 and 2, Tournament Edition, Hobo Murder DLC, HD Remix with Karate Chop Action, The End Is Nigh, Director's Cut Game of the Year Edition, now with 30% less fat, I thought they were an enjoyable experience. And if you like RPGs with action elements, you should enjoy them too. Anyway, this is SteamPunk Bob, out.